This is Thom Yorke and Gilles Peterson.
Hello, is it?
We are together.
Yes.
On BBC Radio 6 Music.
Yes.
Basically, Tom, you've just done two soundtracky records. I mean, well, you did a soundtrack.
I did a soundtrack.
And then you did an album which was soundtrack influenced. I mean, well, yeah, tell us a bit about, I mean, is there a connection with Anima and Suspiria?
There's a connection between... No, I think only by osmosis, only by accident. Although, maybe not, actually. I mean, we're doing the Suspiria thing made me start looking at how I piece music together differently, and at the same time was doing Suspiria on and off. I was doing a few performances of the, Tomorrow's Modern Boxes, which is my electronic thing with Nigel and Tarek, the visual artist, and I'd started throwing unused bits and pieces to Nigel to collage together during the performance, to varying degrees of coherentness, and that was kind of a similar thing that I was doing with Suspiria, where I wasn't thinking in terms of normal form. I was just thinking in terms of what might work with picture, which is the bread and butter of normal soundtrack people, what they do, but not if you're a songwriter, which I guess I am. So I guess the similarities is just both sort of vaguely similar methods to start with, getting the stuff together, and then what was nice was just that feeling when doing Suspiria, was that feeling like, okay, I can stretch this, I can repitch this, I can take one element of this, it doesn't have to repeat, it doesn't have to have any of those normal form things, it just needs to work visually. And then I'm on stage with a visual artist, Tarek, who's responding to stuff that we're doing on stage, so I'm getting visual input there as well. So I guess that affected it, because a lot of the tunes were developed with him on stage, or in rehearsal, but much more, I feel like they ended up being much more in your face, because we're trying to get people's attention. They did end up being all like song form things, but they did start as like collaging odd bits and pieces, and Nigel gradually pushing them into a form, with me putting the vocals on it.
I mean, the thing about Suspiria is that what I love about it, it's really, there's a lot of music there.
It's a lot. We had 72 cues, me and Sam, who produced it. 72, involving string quartet, choir. Yeah.
How did it initially open? There was the remake of the film, yep. And did someone approach you? The director approach you?
Yeah,
and
Luca. Yeah, it was like a mission creep. Luca approached me, and I sort of said initially, well, I think I could probably handle this, having never done a soundtrack, if it stays in the realms of electronic, because there's a sort of a natural limitation there, which would keep my brain intact. But then when he started making the picture, I did a lot of stuff before picture that was like that, which I was really excited about, and then one random piano piece that fit exactly from, and then it just changed. It started evolving. He started saying, I really need a string quartet here. I really need, something like a Ligeti piece here, And suddenly I'm like, wow. But it was, honestly, it was hard work, and it was a completely mad process. But I think for me, musically, there was before Suspiria and then there was after, and a lot of stuff that I thought I couldn't do, a lot of walls that I thought I had around me crumbled away, which was really nice, aged 50.
How do you put a track like that together amongst all the other songs, and who was performing on that? Who was what was the?
It was we had a choral section.
Yeah.
And me. Yeah. And it's a funny thing because Luca and Walter, the editor, they sort of came to me and they said, so this Sabbath, this mythical Sabbath that they had in the film, and they described all this grotesque stuff that was going to happen, violent and dismemberment, blood everywhere, and they kind of said, we'd like you to write something really pretty, really beautiful, really transcendent over it, which was like, okay. So that's where I ended up.
Did you know the original? Did you know the Goblin soundtrack?
I knew Goblin.
Right.
But I didn't even know the film that well. I had to go back and watch it again, remind myself. And Goblin, I discovered really late, and just thought, this is weird. It's kind of Radiohead, sort of, but more complicated. But no, I didn't really know much about it. But if I was going to do a soundtrack, it would have to be a horror film, And I just got on with them, with, Luca and Walter, the editor, and the producers. I just immediately felt like, okay, I feel some safe connection here. This is going to be all right,
So you were out of your comfort zone, obviously, doing this, and so. You'd never done it before. Jonny Greenwood had done some films. I mean, you'd done some stuff before. You'd sort of tapped into it a little bit. I mean, only Rag and Bone, or
yeah. Well, that's another thing that sort of filtered in, really, because the Rag and Bone thing was a mission creep. Because my friend Marcus, who runs Rag and Bone, we became friends, and then he asked me, because I used to take the piss out of the music they play at fashion shows. Something chronic, because it's usually fairly awful, except for Jun Takahashi, our friend. So yeah, he said, well, can you put some stuff together? So I started putting other people's tunes together. It'd take me half a day, and then suddenly it was I made the mistake of saying, maybe I'll do it, and then suddenly I'm doing these 10-minute pieces from scratch. And then I recruited Nigel into that, and it was interesting though, because it forced me to go and look at the way I did stuff. I'd never really thought in terms of a 10-minute piece and what that means, I didn't really think of it in terms of a fashion show thing at all, because that's a dead end. So it was more just, okay, how can I make this work over a sustained period of time and be exciting and not boring? I don't know. It was just another challenge under great amounts of pressure usually.
You don't need to do this,
No, that was the little sign in my head. It was flashing red neon all the time. Yeah, but there I was.
And it's satisfying.
Yeah, it was satisfying. I mean, a lot of it filtered into Anima.
Yeah.
Twist was pretty much straight off something that I developed for Marcus. A few things were. Twist.
So with Suspiria, there's one other thing. When you're making this music with this director that you previously didn't know, and he's got this whole idea, and you're suddenly not the front man of a global...
I am so not in charge.
Not in charge. So you're just making all this music, and you're getting these little sort of references, maybe little ideas or directives from him. You make this music, and then you go and see the film. And how does that feel when some amazing bits aren't in there, or
Oh yeah, that whole thing. I mean, by that point, I'm like, I'm past caring.
Yeah.
I've done my bit, and there's a kind of nice. I mean, the few people I talk to about this who do that sort of thing, there's a nice kind of. There's a weird combination of ultimately, it isn't my responsibility, and ultimately I'm playing one part, like the music is like a character in someone else's drama, and that's kind of how you have to look at it. And I mean, to be honest, I was just enjoying the process of watching. There was part of me was like, thank God it ain't me driving this, because the pressure and the money and all that stuff is just, I don't know any of them do it at all. No, really, honestly.
What about Paul, Thomas, and I mean?
Well, then yeah, we just did this.
How does he do it? How does it?
I don't know.
Have you asked him that question?
Well, I mean, I guess we were in the same boat together when we did the Netflix short film thing. Because I think that started as like an idle conversation with Nigel Godrich. We went down to this location in France where it's like a quarry where we discovered there was a video projection facility, and we wanted to use Tarek's visuals, and then immediately it's like, oh, this is never going to happen because we're going to have to, get all these dancers down there. It's really difficult. And then he made a phone call and came back and said, yeah, well, apparently Netflix is going to pay for it. And we were like, oh God. So suddenly, actually, it was a proper production, proper film production, and we were under pressure. We had an absolute deadline which we couldn't miss.
Album was made.
Album was already done, but as it was being finished, I was getting, sucked into this and developing this with Paul, and with the choreographer, Damien, and it was just one of those like, yeah, this is obviously never going to happen. And then suddenly I'm in Prague and with my partner Diane, who's also in it, rehearsing, and all these dancers are showing up, and like one of the best directors of photography in the world is showing up because it's Paul, so obviously he would, one of the best cameramen in the world who's just shot Star Wars. And you're like, oh my God, it was a ace experience just to watch Paul, Paul in his element with his glasses on, chuckling to himself if it was going well. I knew it was going well if he was chuckling in the background.
And how many takes did it take for you? I mean, did you just, because it's all super choreographed and you are part of that yourself, right? These people have trained forever for that.
These dancers, and Damien, I don't know how the hell they do it. It's really insane. They were just turning up, learning these moves, walking on set and just not messing up. I mean, I guess it's like getting an orchestra. It was a similar thing to getting an orchestra, and they just work as one unit, even though they may have never even met each other. It's insane. Totally.
Did you take? Was there a lot of takes? Did you?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Certain,
on your part.
Certain things.
Were there moments when it was an amazing thing?
Oh, there was one spectacular night which my shoulder is still recovering from, where we had to do this spinning thing, and Diana lands on my shoulder in a particular way, and I carry her around, but it's like she's at a 30-degree angle as I spin, and it's me and several other dancers are doing it, and we were shooting and it was getting dark. The first camera broke, we had to pause, and we shot through the night every night for a week, I think, or just over a week, so from 6 in the evening to 6 in the morning. And we had 3 cameras break on us, and it took one take took pretty much, I think it was like 5 hours. By that point, my shoulder, all the dancers had been doing this weird move for hours. But I'm not complaining, it's right. My shoulder is, but I'm not.
Well, it's amazing, and it's funny actually, because I think I just got back from Sicily, and I did a little thing over there, and your partner is from Sicily, and she also is part of the. Is she part of the sort of a theatre group in Sicily, or?
She has been very involved in it, on and off.
Because I was told that you were known to be travelling around with the theatre group in a van around Italy, and
mate, you'd be stunned the amount of random rumours that we encounter as we go around, and none of it's true.
That's not true, because that every word on the street over there.
there are, depending on what city we are, what time.
I'm just thinking whether you know, in a way you got a little bit of insight of that world through travelling around with her. And
I have a lot. Yeah, I have a lot. She was doing this Pirandello play, 6 Characters in Search of an Author, which is actually one of my favourite plays. And I, you know, was going to visit her while she was rehearsing it, and then watched her doing it, even though it was in Italian. And yeah, I guess, I mean, I had a bit of experience with drama and stuff at school. I was really into it, but yeah, it's really something when your partner's in that world, how much you, again, just by osmosis, it's just like you end up understanding those techniques a lot more. And she, when we did the video for the Anima thing, she had a lot to contribute in terms of the way we did the choreography together and stuff, and that was really something. That was really cool to actually collaborate with your partner in front of millions of people. Kind of strange.
And would you say there's a parallel as well between like being part of a dance company or a theatre company
there's so many there's so many parallels. I mean, one of the ones I thought was really interesting, which any musician knows this, like you can rehearse as much, you can rehearse till you puke, but it doesn't make sense till you get on stage in front of an audience. And it's the same with like watching them develop a theatre performance. Like it doesn't mean anything on stage until there's an audience. It's kind of fascinating. I was producing so much stuff, I couldn't like keep track of what
Nigel
I was doing. No, Nigel was like, I'm doing this myself.
You purposely thought
yeah,
that?
but I don't think he wanted to be involved. He's not, soundtracks I don't think really are his thing. So yeah, Sam came along and like extricated me from my entanglement and put everything into a form and took responsibility for the most difficult bit, which is actually putting it on the film, which I couldn't do. But we're both like rabbit in headlights like situation, you know, what the hell's going on here? Yeah.
Talking of which, I heard that the other day. I saw that the other day.
Video's good too. I just saw James.
It's great. I forgot how good that track was actually at the time.
We started playing it with Atoms for Peace at one point. Super cool. Try and do it live. Bernard Parmegiani. Conjugaison du Timbre, where essentially he takes someone playing saxophone, as you can hear, and all done on tape. There's tape edits, because that was the music concrete thing, right? Collaging, little loops, changing the pitches, sending backwards and forwards, putting it through reverbs, and then using tape as score, if you know what I mean. So here we go. So one simple saxophone note then becomes this. What I find fascinating about it, I'd known a little bit about it, but when at the beginning of the project, I thought, well, that's my main reference point, is music concrete, because to me it's always felt like horror music, but it's an interesting way of developing sound, you know. And so when I was doing my librarian bit and going through it all, I just discovered how much of it is similar to modern granular synthesis techniques that people use now. And they were doing it with tape, and it would have taken them weeks to piece this stuff together. And it would be like a score, because each piece is like fitting together, you know, there's no repetition, there's no nothing. So I got heavily obsessed with this sort of thing.
Fantastic. So, who's that exactly? Who's that? So,
he's, I think, one of the music concrete. Excuse my ignorance for not knowing how to say that.
Music concrete is what, and where does it come from, and who invented it? Go on, no, but is it a French thing? Is it like, is it sort of...
French, and it seemed to be like, this is total ignorance, so it seemed to be French and Italian, as far as I understand it. It seemed to come out of the, you know, developing techniques for tape editing and discovering that this weird crossover between audio engineers and studios and musicians discovering there's a sort of area in the middle where you use in the studio to create processing sound in order to create a score, essentially, which is really, really close to, you know, early horror film stuff. I mean, it's on the edge of sound effects. You know, this is a whole great area. Bernard Parmegiani, some guy, what else? Pierre Henry is a very famous one. Also Pierre Schaeffer, and then Stockhausen was doing a bit of that, and then later, obviously, Steve Reich was using tape when he first started to do the loops.
There's a real history of that in France as well, isn't it? It feels to me in Europe. I mean, of course, in the UK you had your, well, I suppose you had your BBC.
Well, that's in fact, yeah, I've got in my lineup of stuff to play. You know, the old
Adele Derbyshire.
Yeah, Adele Derbyshire tune, which I mean, it's the one, All the Dreams. Do you know that one?
No.
The collage. She just got a bunch of people to talk about their dreams. Do you want to hear it?
Let's play it.
All right.
I mean, when I saw No Country for Old Men, and I heard the score, it was only at the screen on his. It's not a particularly amazing sound system in there, but I remember going, this is incredible. It had a massive impact on me. I don't know what they did. It was just a wonderful, amazing moment. Was there a moment for you when you went to see something and you were like, wow, this is, forget the music, forget the film, this is where it really is, the music and the film, everything's just like, wow.
Well, I mean, there's lots. There's always been. I mean, early on it was Morricone, obviously. Like those films to me are all about the music, the spaghetti westerns, and then horror films like The Exorcist.
So where the actual music was, because you know when you went to see those films, I mean, I think Jaws had that effect. I mean, when you heard the music and that, it was like, oh yeah, the music
doesn't date well, that one, but yeah,
doesn't it? I probably just heard it too many times. Yeah.
But because so some films, the soundtrack is really, really important. You know, without whatever's going on underneath, you've no idea where you're at or what's going on. You know. I've always been very aware of that, but just figured it would never be anywhere that I'd be able to go to, and until I got a gentle nudge from Luca, really. So,
should we play some Italian stuff? Some Italian, talking of, you know, Morricone. Should I play something? This is one of the sort of Italian composers. I mean, this isn't really. We're going into sort of, I suppose, more kind of cliched type sounds in a way, but there's Emiliani, there's Ennio Morricone, there's a whole group of.
So what you got?
Well, I've got this guy here, and I'm a bit of a fan. Piero Piccioni.
I like the way you say that, by the way.
Terrible, right? I mean, the pizza place. No, Piero Piccioni.
Piero Piccioni.
Yeah, and there's one of those. He's a lesser known.
Lucky Luciano. That's kind of famous, right? I think that's pretty famous.
Yeah, shall I play?
Yeah. That is insane. So bass player's working for is living on that one.
But I like it goes out enough.
Certainly goes out.
It goes out, but it's in, and I mean, interesting. These. That world of, I don't think he was particularly well known outside of Italy, and
it's an amazing piece of music.
Made over 300 soundtracks. Have you got an Emiliani one? Have you got a Morricone one?
Oh, go on, yes, I've got this one that my partner told me about, which is this singer, I think from the late 60s, early 70s, called Milva. Metti Una Sera a Cena, and it's a famous Morricone melody. She did a whole album of like Morricone melodies turned into song, and this one's it builds. You got to listen to the whole thing because it builds in the most insane way.
Ennio Morricone, incredible, still alive.
Yep.
Have you
got
met
a
him?
studio in Rome. No, I haven't met him. I know people who know him, but I've not met him. No, I don't. It's okay.
Really?
Yeah, but he has a great studio in Rome apparently that sometimes you can use if you're lucky.
Are you a bit fan like that about sort of not wanting to meet someone like him, or what would you sort of, you know?
I wouldn't know what to say. You know,
Right.
I'm useless in these situations. You know. No, yeah, I'm not very good with that.
Okay, so we've done. We're sort of in Italy. What do you think we should go from here?
Where should we go now?
So we've done our kind of quite sort of.
Well, maybe we should go. Go on, you got the wheel.
Well,
Where are we going?
I'm just thinking contemporary cinema actually, and music of today in the film environment. And I pulled out a couple of pieces of music. First of all, I want to play something from this new film called Bacurau, which has just been getting a lot of great it's out in Brazil, and very much looking at the state of the nation, and the music from it is amazing. So I want to play a piece from that, and then I wanted to play a piece of music from a film from 1964, which is the time of the military dictatorship, and a similar film based also in the northeast of Brazil. So let me play those tracks.
Cool, let's hear it. Wow.
So that's. Do you know Boogerins, by the way? This group Boogerins. Don't you know them?
No.
Mate, I want to play something from Boogerins. No, I'll tell you why. Because I did a show with them recently, and I think you'd really like them. And they're a band from Brazil.
I like it.
And
It reminds me a tiny bit of the OCs, actually, a little bit. But that's probably just because I'm listening to the OCs a lot.
When you go to Brazil as Thom Yorke or Atoms for Peace or Radiohead, what do you do? How do you go about it? Do you tend to spend time there? Do you
No, because it's always like on the you're doing a tour, you're banging around really fast.
Yeah.
So I was in Rio for a couple of days, but I don't really feel like I saw a lot. And my partner, she got food poisoning, so it was a bit of a mare. We had that thing that comes from the trees, whatever it is. I can't remember what it's called. It looks like a leek, but it's not. She immediately got sick, so it was a bit of a nightmare.
So,
had fun.
So we're in Brazil. We've just done a bit of Sergio Ricardo from 1974, and we've actually 1964. I completely got that wrong. Sergio Ricardo, and music from the latest film called Bacurau, which has quite well-known people on it. Sonia Braga, Udo Kier is on that as well. It won the jury prize this year at Cannes.
Really? Right. Everybody sit down.
For the film. I don't know about the music, but it sounded pretty good to me. And the music by brothers Mateus Alves and Thomas Alves Souza.
So what should we do now? So I feel like when I was listening to that, I could either play some Jonny, because I kind of fancy that. I could play something sweet, or something not so sweet, or I can play you another Italian song singer, Sicilian in fact, who sort of seems to go with that piece you just played, the vocal piece. Where would you like to go, John?
The vocal piece that you played,
No, your one just now, the 1960s.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, you know what? I think maybe we can do like 3 in a row.
Okay.
Maybe you can just sort of go from the Sicily to Jonny somehow.
Yeah, I think I can do that. No, let's have a look. Well, if anybody's still there, we're doing all right, right?
We're all there. And it's interesting because he's done the big Hollywood thing.
Jonny?
In a way. And you've gone sort of Italian left field.
I don't know, man. That's pretty left field.
Yeah, I mean, would you go to, because there must be another level of pressure when you're going to go through the Hollywood, or would there be?
I don't know. I mean, the way that Paul and Jonny work is that Paul definitely protects him from all that kind of stuff, and Paul himself is in a lucky position. He has got a lot of clout. He doesn't get pushed around. You know, he's established. Obviously, he's like a revered director, so yeah, he can kind of ask for stuff and it just happens. So Jonny's very protected. I think it's probably very different for other people.
Yeah. What was that from?
That's There Will Be Blood. From
that was
There Will
from
Be Blood.
That was from.
And it reminded me actually because I went to the proms the other night with Jonny, did his premiere at the Royal Albert Hall, and there was this one moment, actually not during Jonny's piece, during a Steve Reich piece called Pulse, which is amazing. And at the end of it, this bloke's just out in the audience, because it's the proms, it's a bit anarchic, so I'm just going, some guy just goes, absolute nonsense, and storms out with a red face. Which is like, mate, if you don't get Steve Reich, what are you doing there?
Here's one I really like, who I think is one of the sort of modern composers that are doing good stuff, is Nicolas Bretel. If Beale Street Could Talk.
Oh yeah.
Let's listen to this.
It feels quite Lalo Schifrin style kind of chords and stuff. Very nice.
What should we call what we're doing? What is this we're doing today?
I don't know, mate. I just turned up in your basement and this is what we're doing. And there's some mics on.
You need to come up with a name, Tom.
Alright, sorry.
Yeah,
we'll get that to the end.
Exactly.
How about leading on from that, I feel like I'd like to, if anybody's still with us, we'd like to move into something slightly more electronic for a while. Take the air out. I'm a big fan of Mark Pritchard, and also have been lucky to work with him. And I feel like the last full record he did was very soundtrack, in fact, in its own way. He sort of dumped a lot of things he normally does and pushed himself in a different direction. And then he, as a surplus follow-up to that, he did a small EP called Four Worlds, and there's this one track which I was obsessed with for ages called Come Let Us, which is again in that area of the spoken word thing. It's just so beautifully done. Every time I listen to this tune, it makes me think of things I keep reading about, what's happening in politics and the environment with Extinction Rebellion, and it feels like we're in this particular moment. And a friend of mine, George Monbiot, who writes for The Guardian, he wrote it in something recently. He said, we have to come up with something positive. We need to tell a new story, a story that makes sense, a story that involves us in participating, a story of hope, a story of a future where we again find a way to be at harmony with the environment. We again find a way to create a society that embraces difference, embraces humanity, and we've got to this point where we've gone into this spasm. And I listen to a piece of music like that, which just has one simple phrase in it, but with something within that phrase and the way he uses it to repeat it just sounds like hope to me. Maybe that's a bit much, but you got to look where you can find it, haven't you?
Is music the answer?
No. Well, music is. I'm surprised how much the older I get, the more I think it's more important than I used to think. Because there are not many things that stop you in your tracks and make you reassess. And we're all sort of looking for moments to kind of open up a door and see something more than us. You know what I mean? We don't all go to church on Sundays anymore, and I don't think that was probably maybe the right thing to do anyway. But humanity has this capability of creating things that move beyond us, spiritually, and allow us to stop and think in different ways. Whether it be a horror film soundtrack that makes us see something about ourselves that we probably don't want to see, but we should, or something like what Mark's just done with that piece. But we and then on a more sort of atomic level, music is frequencies of sound and frequencies of sound affect us, you know, as well as words. Melodic sounds affect us, do things to us on a physical level that is important, and that we have always needed on one level. So might sound wildly pretentious, but you know, we struggle to form connections with each other these days, and I think music is one of the few where we still do have that. You know, if you play in front of, you know, like it is when you DJ, you spin a tune and people, you get that rush through the audience. Same with me, if I'm on stage and a moment happens in a large crowd of people, you connect on a different level, which is incredibly important. If our only connections were the ones that we see in our little black mirrors here on our little phones, then we'd all be really super duper screwed, you know. Anyway,
yeah, you know, it's interesting. Another person that listening to Pritchard and sort of thinking about your relationship with electronic music, which is evidently very within your music for years and years, solo or otherwise, and your relationship with everybody from Fortet to James Holden to...
I was going to play some James Holden later, hopefully.
Well, let's play some. I mean, I just think that, you know, that's really, really such an incredible area of music and so creative, and I'm just thinking they've all got records out at the moment, like Hearing Doesn't Stop.
None of them do.
No. So you still getting you know, it seems to me that
I'm still super inspired. I mean, to be perfectly honest, the ones who really keep inspiring me the most are Mark and James Holden. James Holden, it just constantly surprises me where he goes with stuff, you know. And the album The Inheritors that he did a few years ago totally blew my mind. And in fact he came, I'm not sure, James will probably tell me I got this wrong, but I think I wrote to him around that time and said, do you think you can, maybe it was before or after, I can't remember, but he came on tour with us and he'd never thought of doing that kind of thing before. And he turns up with his modular gear. You know, it's the first time I'd seen anyone like turn up with a bunch of gear like that and put it on stage, and I think he was kind of worried it wasn't all going to work, but it was his shows were amazing,
and he
really
builds
amazing.
It all himself, right?
He builds it all himself. He's such a tech head. I mean, he's, in fact, you know, he uses Mac's MSP in really, really similar ways to Jonny. The way Jonny uses it, they're kind of similar people in some ways. But yeah, he's a real tech head, and he was standing there explaining to me all this stuff. I didn't understand a word of it, but I drilled it into my brain, and I went home and researched it all, and now I'm like a real modular geek. Nothing like that, nothing like him. I've never had the patience to learn Mac's MSP, but get me in front of a modulist, I'll stay there all weekend. You'll have to make me some breakfast at some point. I won't move if I get half the chance. But you know, James is The Inheritors, the album, was a massive influence on me. Just as much about the actual finished product, the finished thing. I didn't use the word product there. The finished thing. As much that, and as much about what lay behind it in terms of the geekery and the techniques and all that stuff. Totally fascinates me.
What else? Where should we go? Should we keep it filmy, or are we going?
Well, there was just a couple of it depends really. I did fancy playing, going back to where we started and sort of influences things. There was this sort of area of really interesting sort of music that ends up being like electronic music that ends up being a form rather than. Almost like putting a sculpture in the middle of the room and letting it turn. Just a different way of engaging with music. But I think we might need to ease in for that. You know what I mean?
Well, we could maybe
a little bit Aphex Twin to warm them up.
Yes. Why not?
How? Yes. You know, my favourite. Aphex Twin album actually kind of is computer controlled acoustic instruments.
Did you ever work with him?
No, we did correspond for a bit, and but I wasn't really in a fit state at that moment. I would have loved to, and I sort of like lost the thread. But he was talking about this record at that point, and he was talking about the fact that he discovered he built some robot to trigger all these instruments. I didn't think anything about it, and then I found this one. I didn't even realise it was out. It sort of came out with no fanfare at all, but it's so cool. Everything is, as far as I know, everything is acoustic instruments. But
what year is this?
Again, this came out 2015.
Yeah.
So but nobody seemed to notice.
I mean, you were saying Mark Pritchard was. I mean, that was a stop moment. This is a beautiful piece.
You like it? Phew.
No, but you know, also no. I think that this is, you know, I think people's tastes are ready for, you know, like it's like, oh no, this is too weird for daytime radio, but I think it's actually complimentary.
I hope so, because I know I was. Anyway, that one's Ben Vida.
Who's
I'm
he?
a massive fan. I have no idea
Wow.
anything about him at all.
That is really.
I don't even know quite how he did that.
Really?
No, well, I mean, I sort of do, but
Right.
I've got a feeling I'm wrong.
So the way it switches from sort of sides.
It's relatively simple, but I don't know.
And we're listening to this on loudspeakers as opposed to headphones.
Yeah.
What's it like on headphones?
Actually, it's better on speakers because I've always been a little obsessed with this thing where if you have a purely electronic sound, then even when it has no air around it at all, once you put it into speakers, it has air around it, so it becomes organic. And if it's pure like that, I get the sense when I listen to it on my system at home, which is pretty natty like yours, that spatially it comes out of the speakers and exists in the space in the room, which is why I love it so much. And the piece before is like a mythical record off Boomcat in the Boomcat world, by Hare. I mean, I can't even pronounce the name of it. Bsf Tyk space 5, and that was a small blast.
How short? I mean, that was.
That was like I just played a little bit of it because I figured otherwise we'd both pulled off the radio.
Well, maybe not. And Aphex Twin. I honestly, the last thing I'd sort of properly listened of his was Pops, which was 2014. So this was.
So yes, it's 2015. So it's after that. Yeah.
And he hasn't performed that live. That sort of.
I don't think he could.
Right. Yeah.
Or maybe he could. Well, that'd be great if you did. Robots.
Tom, what's the score with you for the next? So I want to play some stuff off the latest album, a couple of tracks off that. Maybe we can close with some of our sort of favourite sort of other bits and bobs. I want to go to France to finish off with myself. I don't know where you want to go. What is the plan for you at the moment? And,
I feel like I've been running around a lot too much lately, so my plan is I have a tour with Anima back in America, and then there'll be a bit of touring next year in America and in Europe at some point.
And what is that consisting of?
That is still basically Tarek doing this visual, the live visual stuff, and Nigel assembling the music while I wander up and down on stage and also play instruments and stuff. It's a 3-man band, but not like fairly weird.
And it changes every gig.
It kind of changes I mean, you know, it's a bit like theatre. It's a bit like an installation, but it's been a really fun journey doing it. But I think after that,
what's the perfect size room for that project for you?
Perfect room is a theatre.
Yeah.
Big theatre with where people can dance on the ground floor. I mean, a good one was, we did one in Berlin where it was all standing, and then seats up above. You know, there's been that's after a lot. We started doing it in rave gigs, and it was like people too out of it to really understand what was going on. So yeah, seriously. So that's sort of finishing off. And then I'm sort of clearing the decks, because I've got something I want to just dedicate myself to completely and utterly, which I'm not going to tell you what it is, but you'll like it. So that's it. I mean, I'm trying to clear some space because I feel like I've been running to standstill.
One question regarding DJing versus performing. I mean, you've played from, Boiler Room to Low End Theory to wherever, after shows, this, that and the other. You like to pull the records out or your USB out.
With my USB out.
What's the... what's the difference in your opinion? I know that obviously you've spent more of your time, leading a band or in that, but you've obviously done a lot of DJing, and how would you sort of differentiate the two in terms of freedom and experience?
I think I was dipping my toes into the DJing thing, and then, when I watch you do it, or I watch, Dan Snaith or Kieran, I'm like, I've done back-to-backs with them, and I'm like, okay, I'm into this, but I'm definitely I'm an amateur. I mean, because I don't have that sort of... What I love about it is being in the room and choosing what the music is, and just seeing where it takes the evening, But it's not the late nights. I don't know how you guys do it. I'm not that. I mean, I know that's sort of not your question, but I think after a while.
Have you found yourself in a position as a DJ when you've gone, wow, I have creative freedom, I'm doing interesting things, and I'm getting the satisfaction that I'd get if I was singing, my favourite song?
Early on, I did, yeah. And I think what happens, I had a run of them where there was a couple I did. There was one I did with Dan Snaith in Paris. That was just the best. But I realised afterwards the reason that was the best was like the booth was in this really cool place where no one could get to us, and everyone was far too cool to be taking pictures. And then I had a run of DJ things where people are just standing in front taking pictures, and I thought, all right, I'm done here. This is just a real drag now. So I sort of gave it up. And in a way that coincided with getting stuck into Suspiria, getting back in the studio. And for me, it was like I needed some other way to engage, and it felt there was a lot of stuff I was really turned on to, and I really wanted to share it, and then it all became a little bit more like studio-based, studio head, and I preferred to stay like that.
Yeah. Previous albums, you've always picked some great remixes and done a bit of curation on that side, picking and getting some reimaginations of your music. You going to do this on the new one, on the latest one? Or?
Actually, yeah, we did a few. We did Mark did one, Equinox, and Clark did one of Not the News. Pretty cool, all of them. Clark's one was extremely out there.
What's the best remix? I hate this is awful because obviously there's a few, but if there's one remix that you remember coming back at you and you went, oh my god, I never thought they could take it to that level. Is there a remix that just blew your mind, or did they just all do that?
They all kind of do that. It's a thing. Like, Mark did one. The Equinox one blew my mind in a very odd way. They always, everybody comes to it from such a weird point of view, and I'd literally have to sit there and remind myself of there's been so many of them. There was an old James Holden did one of Reckoner. You ever hear that?
Oh, I don't remember.
It's pretty great. He's singing on it, ish, kind of. That was kind of his challenge. I'm challenging myself to sing on it. He wrote me an email about it afterwards.
So listen, the new album, I want to play 2 songs off it to close today before I play my finishing songs, and you'll play a couple of finishing songs. But talk to me a little bit. Is your son playing drums on this?
And my son played drums on Suspiria, on Has Ended.
Yes.
And on, in fact, on Volk as well.
Who's playing bass on Impossible Knots?
Me. I can play bass.
It's fantastic.
Is it?
It's
super fun. I didn't know. That was kicking around for ages, and then what to do with it. It's like, what the hell? Yeah, it's a joyful one, that one, I think. relatively speaking.
Are you on all the music throughout?
Do I what, sort
on
of,
on the album?
Do I play?
Yeah.
No. Well, the drums on Impossible Knots are incredibly sped up. Something that Phil did.
Yeah.
And Joey from Atoms for Peace also features on a tune as well. They're like long sort of sampled sections that had been kicking around in my box of things I really, really need to use. Box.
Well, I've just finally got the finished artwork.
Well, I'm really proud of the artwork on this record.
It's beautiful.
We found a way of printing it so it looked exactly like we'd drawn directly onto the sleeve, but it's not. It's ink.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe a word about Nigel Godrich as well, because I think he's been very much part of a lot of what you've done for years. And as you say, he wasn't involved in Suspiria. When you say he's producer, does that mean, he's got it? It's not co-producer, it's producer.
It depends on. I've never quite. I don't think either of us really quite understand the literal definition of producer. In this case, it's like assembling pieces that I can't figure out how to assemble. Right the way through. So basically digging through things that are incoherent and making them coherent, which is like writing an assembly. Right the way through to just making sure it sounds good, right the way through to actually being a performer and a fellow musician on the stage making musical decisions on the fly. So it's like everything, and very much like the conceptual part of it was him, in terms of like, let's take this idea of collaging loops and bits and pieces and let's make it something. Let's do something with it other than just repeat what we've already done.
Do you argue?
No. I mean, like,
does he say, "Shut up, this is good enough, let it go"?
Oh yeah, I'll go on forever unless he wrenches the steering wheel from me. Yeah, that's always been a way. But I'm a little bit more zen about it now. Although, you should get him in here and ask. It's my decided, and I'm sticking to it.
Mate, it's been great. So I was going to ask you to finish off with a couple of songs. I'll finish off on the other side with some actually, I'll play something first. I'll play something it's a real cheeky little sweet one, and this is somebody who I'm kind of become a bit obsessed with. It's a French composer and record label owner called Pierre Barou, and he had a record label called Saravat Records in France, and he was also the person who wrote the soundtrack to Un Homme et Une Femme. And he passed away actually a few years ago. He was like 90 or something, and he was the first person to really popularize Brazilian music in France. So apart from being a great composer and part of several great soundtracks, but he also ran a record label that signed some amazing world music, some great Brazilian musicians like Nana Vasconcelos, great French musicians like Jacques Higelin and Brigitte Fontaine, and made great music. So, and in film. So I'm going to play a song from Un Homme et Une Femme, which is combines all of that. It combines him singing, it combines his Brazilian sort of influence and the way he kind of pushed that music out, and it also talks about him, the record label guy. This is Samba Sarava.
So, would you like me to finish?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, I think predictably enough, finish with an Alice Coltrane tune. But one that I recently discovered, it's called Hare Krishna. But I mean, I don't really pay attention to that bit. But it's what do you call it? I'd say it's like a ray of light to me. It's one of those ones. On the bad days, stick this on.
Tom and Giles is something. T&G's.
Tom and Giles. Try to get thrown off Six Music. Try their best to get thrown off.
Part one. I should do.
Or, yeah, we get in with this and everyone's happy then,